President-elect Donald Trump has promised to deport millions of undocumented people, build a wall at the border, and limit future immigration. Not surprisingly, immigrants are feeling a lot of fear and uncertainty. To find out what they might expect and how they can prepare, let's welcome Jenny Ansay, supervisory attorney at Justice for Our Neighbors, a United Methodist agency that provides free immigration legal services, education, and advocacy. We also welcome Linda to our discussion. Thank you all for being here. Jenny, a new president has been elected. There's so much fear about what can happen. We're not really sure, but what are people thinking are going to be the next things to happen now after he takes office?
Well, as you mentioned, it's really unclear what's going to happen with the president-elect in terms of immigration. But one thing that is clear is that he has consistently spoken out in very anti-immigrant rhetoric. The discussions about building a wall on the border with Mexico have started again, and he also has been talking a lot about undoing the executive actions of President Obama, including DACA, or Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Again, it's really hard to tell. I would expect that immigration enforcement would be up. We might be seeing more ICE raids, more Customs and Border Protection involvement in the immigration system. I'm hoping that DACA will be saved, but I'm not super hopeful that it will be. So we can expect probably DACA to go away, and I think it'll just be more difficult for people to come to the United States, and there's going to be definitely challenges.
Trump has promised a return to what he's called historic norms. This has been all the party rhetoric, historic norms. What does that even mean, first of all? But also, what does it mean for immigrant communities that are living in Chicago or other places right now?
I think that's a really good question, and I think it's actually funny that he phrases it in terms of that, because the U.S. is a country that's built on immigrants, by immigrants, with immigrants. We're a very diverse country. With people of all different kinds of backgrounds and heritages, religions, etc. So I think what it means to Donald Trump would be that he wants to limit certain people from coming into the United States. He's said some pretty hateful and terrible things about Mexican immigrants, that he thinks they're all drug dealers or rapists, which is far from the truth. And he also says some really terrible things about Muslim immigrants. And it seems like he wants to limit them and target them and make it really difficult for them to come here or gain status here in the United States.
Linda, you're one of the people whom he says all this hateful rhetoric about. What does it feel like to hear it? What does it feel like in your community in these times right now?
I mean, it sucks, It's like you said, I'm both. I'm Mexican. I'm from Mexico, but I'm also Muslim. So it's kind of I get to experience the both. I see the fear that my family goes through. We don't know when we're gonna get stopped, and someone tells us like go back to Mexico or something. Because even if the laws are gonna take a little bit or whatever, hate, you can do that. You can feel that like so instantly. And yeah, and with that hate comes, okay, well, what's the next step? What are we fearing for? Like, although we finally have a work permit and a social security number, like, is that gonna get taken away from us? And are we gonna have to go back to a place that we don't know? And lose everything we have here, like.
And so you call on folks like Jenny and other advocates who are helping and trying to help these communities. I mean, Jenny, what's your answer to that? I mean, they're worried. Are they going to lose work permits? What's going to happen now? I think there's a lot of fear that, okay, everybody's going to be loaded up on a bus or something, or a wall's going to get built. Like what? I mean, realistically, from your perspective.
So certain people are certainly at risk of losing their work permits or maybe put on a faster track to deportation. There's certain things that Trump can and can't do in terms of the immigration laws and policies in place right now. With something like Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, he can take that away with basically the stroke of a pen. That's very much at risk. With something like a statute, there's more of a process to that. It has to kind of go through either a Supreme Court review or kind of both houses of Congress, and a lot more has to be done. Trump can't just take that away like automatically or very easily from people. So honestly, depending on the specific immigration status of people, some people really do have something to fear, and they could lose their work permits, they could be deported, and others have less to fear in terms of their immigration status. That's not to say that this rhetoric that he's been spewing in the election doesn't, create a lot of hate and a lot of just terrible things have been happening to my clients. A lot of my clients, especially in the days immediately after the election, had just called me freaking out at all hours of the night, just like wondering what's going to happen to them because their children had been told, oh, your mommy and daddy are getting deported back to Mexico. Or, another one of my clients asked me to come up with a nickname for him because he drives for Uber and he has an Arabic name, so he didn't want to get beat up like one of his friends did. These are very real consequences of the election that are happening that don't exactly have to do with someone's immigration status, but we already know they're happening, and we already know that Trump's election has sort of empowered these people to just like exhibit this hate towards the people who I work with and our immigrant brothers and sisters, and it's really, really terrifying.
It's really helpful, Jenny, to hear about what's happening on the advocate side, from the law side and policy and fighting and doing all those things. I wonder what folks who are not lawyers or are advocates in a different kind of way, they just really are looking at everything happening and saying, this is awful. What can they be doing right now?
Well, I think there's a lot to be doing. I think if you see instances of hate, like if you're in a classroom with someone who's being made fun of because they're Mexican or something, I think if you stand up to them, that's really helpful. If you see a woman with a hijab being harassed on public transportation, kind of sit by her and see if she's okay and get between her and her attacker. You can also kind of research organizations that do help, like JFON, Justice for Our Neighbors, or other organizations like that, and either give their contact information to your friends who might have immigration questions, or give them money or volunteer your time with those organizations too. There's plenty of things for non-lawyers to do. And there's always, right now you can call your Congress people, of course, your senators to talk about some of Trump's nominees for cabinet positions and stuff like that, because they're really problematic. A lot of them have really terrible stances on immigration. And that's something that any person who lives in the United States can do, call a senator or their representative to let them know how you feel about the policies in place.
Linda, you are Muslim, you come from the Mexican community as well. These are not just identifiers, this is who you are. And to experience these times, I'm sure, is very, very painful and very confusing as well about what you and your communities can be doing right now. What are you all's communities doing right now about what's happening, and how are you responding or organizing, even within your own house?
Okay. Well, there's a lot being done, and I think that the most important thing that we're seeing is that it's not just Muslims that are getting attacked. It's not just Mexicans. It's not just it's a lot of us. We have like the huge Black Lives Matter movement. So what we've been kind of pondering upon is how can we help each other out, because this is something that we have in common. Like Trump's campaign definitely it showed a lot of hate to many different minorities, and if we all kind of stick together and say, not because I'm Muslim, I'm only going to help out a Muslim brother. If I see an African American woman who's being harassed, hey, you stop it. I stand up for her. If I see someone who's disabled who's being harassed, I'm going to stand up for them and stuff, and that's what it is. And we're at my local mosques and stuff, what we're having to do is just kind of having these classes on what to do if you get harassed, because it's always it's always your fault. If I get harassed, if I respond and stuff, oh, now it's my fault, and now it's Muslim woman attacks so and so, when really they were coming after me. So just really learning, okay, what can we do, what are my rights, some very basic self-defense classes, because we don't know how far these people are willing to go. And far as immigration and stuff like that, just know your rights. What can they not do? I think that's very important. And I, personally, I reached out to Jenny, when this whole thing happened. I was freaking out. I'm what's gonna happen? And the answer, sadly, we don't know. Okay, so what do we know, and what can we do? So a lot of those, just know your rights. What can't they do?
What gives you all hope? What gives you hope?
Well, I think that in the immediate aftermath of the election, we had a lot of people reaching out to us, trying to figure out how they could help. And, we've had a lot of people contributing financially to us as well. But just also, working with my clients, with people like Linda, they give me hope as well because they're very strong in the face of this. I have people in my family who are immigrants and things like that too, but the issues aren't as immediate for me as they are for people like Linda or other folks who I represent and try to gain status for. So just the fact that they're able to continue the fight and they're not, completely breaking down or giving up on things too has given me a lot of hope personally.
Just like the support from my neighbors, just I'm saying like the really small things. I've gotten approached twice, and in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my God, this, I don't mean to sound racist or anything, but like this white lady's approaching, what's she about to say, and she's like, hey, I just want to check, are you okay? I know that, times are tough and stuff. I just want to know, are you okay? And I just want you to know that I stand with you. And like that just like makes my whole day, it's like, it's so amazing to know that like, my neighbors. So I would say, yeah, like if you know that you have Muslim or immigrant or, your neighbors that are being harassed, like just go and tell them like, hey, I support you. Like I'm here for you. I don't stand for any of this, because we as minorities also have these preconceptions. Like if we see like a Caucasian looking like, male or female, we kind of assume, oh, they're Republicans. No, let them know you're not and stuff. And, kind of like open our eyes too and let us know that, we have support from you and not just from our own communities, right?
Well, it's so important that when those folks do come up to you, you continue to share your story. And thank you for being a witness in some challenging times right now. Continue to share your story and blessings to your communities. And thank you for being an advocate, because it's so important that those white ladies know where to go and everybody knows that there's a place for everybody in doing some good in this world right now. Mm-hmm. I am Julian DeShazier for Different Drummers in the Greater Chicago Broadcast Ministries. Keep the faith.